Hello, kids! In a forest, there was a beautiful princess who was cursed by an evil fairy and fell into a sleep for 100 years. Will the princess ever wake up? Will she be rescued from that magic spell? Let's read the story Sleeping Beauty to find out the answer. Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen who had no children for many years. Every day the queen sighed and said, "If only we had a child." But for a long time, they had none. One day, when the queen was bathing in the river, a frog jumped out of the water and said, "Before a year has passed, you'll give birth to a beautiful baby girl." What the frog said came true, and at last the queen had a daughter.
Your Majesty, before a year has passed, you'll give birth to a baby girl.
Do you really mean that? I hope my wish will really come true.
The king gave a feast to mark his baby's birth. He wanted to invite all the fairies in his kingdom, but there were 13 fairies, and he had only 12 golden plates. So, one fairy had to be left out. The 12 fairies who came presented the princess with many magical gifts. After the 11th fairy spoke her wish, the 13th one suddenly appeared. She was very angry at not being invited to the feast. She said, "When the princess is 15 years old, she'll prick her finger on a spindle and she'll die." Then she left as suddenly as she came. All the guests were horrified, but the 12th fairy quietly stepped forward and said, "The princess won't die. She'll only fall into a sleep that will last 100 years.
The princess will have a personality as sweet as an angel. The princess will have a wonderful grace in all she does or says. The princess will be the most beautiful woman in the world."
When the princess is 15 years old, she'll prick her finger on a spindle and she'll die. I can't break that evil spell, but the princess won't die. She'll only fall into a sleep that will last 100 years. To keep the curse from happening, the king told everyone that they were forbidden to spin, and all spindles were removed from the kingdom, so there was nothing on which the princess could prick her finger. When the princess grew up, all the wishes of the fairies came true. She was beautiful, kind, clever, and everybody loved her. One day, when the princess was 15 years old, the king and queen went out. The princess was left alone at home, and she wandered about the whole palace all by herself.
Princess, please stop! You should not be wandering around
Don't
all
worry,
by yourself.
nothing
It's
is going
dangerous.
to happen. I can take care of myself.
At last, she came into a little room at the top of the tower. She turned a rusty key, and the door flew open. There she found an old woman spinning cloth on a strange-looking machine. Seeing a spindle for the first time, the princess was curious. But as she tried to get the spindle to work, the needle pricked her finger. She fell asleep immediately, and the old lady put her on the bed nearby.
Hello, who are you and what are you doing? Can you please let me try it?
I am spinning. Come nearer if you want to try.
Thank you so much.
When the princess pricked her finger and fell asleep, everyone else in the palace fell asleep too. The fire in the oven grew still. The cook who was roasting the meat fell asleep, and so did the king and queen. who had just come back from their trip. As the years passed, rose bushes began to grow up around the palace. People in the kingdom said there was a princess called Rose sleeping in the palace. After a while, she became known as Sleeping Beauty. Many times a prince would come by and try to enter the castle to rescue the princess, but none could get in because they couldn't pass through the thick rose bushes. After 100 years had passed, a prince visited the kingdom. He was told about the story of Princess Rose asleep in the palace. He wanted to find her to see if he could awake her. Everyone told him not to go because many other princes had tried and been caught in the bushes and had to give up. However, the prince was determined to find out the truth for himself.
Prince, don't go, please. Those bushes are so thick that no one can pass through. You'll be caught in them.
I'm not afraid. I'll certainly find the beautiful Princess Rose.
Amazingly, when the prince tried to get through the thick bush, the roses bloomed beautifully, and all the bushes opened up by themselves to let him pass through. The prince was astonished at the sleeping palace. Everything was exactly as it was 100 years ago when the princess fell asleep. The palace was so quiet that he could hear himself breathing. The prince walked through the palace until he reached the room at the top of the tower where Princess Rose was lying asleep. She was so beautiful that the prince couldn't take his eyes off of her. He knelt beside her and gave her a sweet kiss on her lips. At that very moment, the princess opened her eyes and looked at him tenderly.
My goodness, is this Princess Rose? How beautiful she is.
Who are you? Why did you wake me?
The couple walked down the stairs hand in hand. Everyone in the castle awoke, and so did the king and queen. The fire in the oven flickered again, and the cook continued to turn the roast. The king and queen were so delighted that they held a wonderful wedding for the prince and princess, who lived together happily ever after. Kids, the prince's kiss woke the princess. But it was his bravery and true love that broke that magic spell. There are many miracles in our world, so you should always try to be good and make the most of your time in school by learning all you can. Be brave, as this will help you find the miraculous things in life. Thank you for reading the story. Goodbye.